What inspired you to write Itch and Itch Rocks?
Well, originally it was a number of things all happening at the same time. First of all, my son, who's 10, had come back from school very interested in science, and this was quite a surprise because I'm not a science guy particularly, although I am now. But he wasn't really into football, he wasn't into sport and all the things that boys were supposed to be into. And he couldn't really find a book that was perfect for him. So I thought I'd write a short story. And I wasn't quite sure what the theme was going to be. Anyway, then I came across this phrase, element hunter, which I hadn't come across before. An element hunter means someone who collects everything in the periodic table. And I thought it was such a perfect idea for a book. I was certain that someone else had done it first. So I did some frantic research thinking, someone else must have thought of this, and no one had. So once I realised that the idea of an element hunter was there for the taking, that's really when it started. But I still thought it was going to be a brief story, like a couple of sides of A4 maybe, and then it turned out to be 400 sides of A4 and much longer. So it sort of came from there. And I'd done a show on 5 Live, and we'd done a lot of conversations with eminent scientists, and I had started to get a lot more interested in science anyway, because at school I really wasn't bothered, to be honest. So it was all those things coming together. But the phrase element hunter was the key moment when I thought, okay, I need to write this.
So before you wrote Itch, did you ever want to write before that? Was there any point in your life when you thought, I really want to write a book? Or?
I wish I could say that the answer to that was yes, because all the authors I've interviewed, and there are probably hundreds, all have one thing in common, and that is that they've always wanted to write, or they always have written. Now, I've enjoyed writing, and I've written the odd column for newspapers, that kind of thing, but I'm a very slow writer. So the idea of writing a novel had never, ever occurred to me. I've done some books which are like spin-offs from the radio programme, but I'd never written a novel. So the idea of writing a piece of fiction had never occurred to me until this point. And then when it did hit, it was like being possessed with an idea. And I would wake up at like 2 o'clock in the morning thinking, does that bit link with that bit? Do those characters work? There's a timeline issue there. They can't do that because, all that stuff. And I became really boring and just completely obsessed by it.
Are any of the characters in your books based on people that you know or once knew?
I think they are mixtures of all of them. I certainly don't know anyone who's as evil as Dr. Nathaniel Flowerdew. I never had any teachers that were that bad. Close, but not quite that bad. I think Mr. Watkins as a teacher is a sort of an amalgam of all the nice teachers and all the good teachers and all the enthusiastic teachers that you've had. I made quite a big point of Itch not being my son because I think that was a very, it could mess you around really. So I made him very different, both physically and in age. So the answer to your question is no, not really. They are all sort of combinations and creations of people who I've met, with one exception, and that is the head teacher of the Cornwall Academy is my sister, kind of. But yeah, Dr. Dart is really my sister, who's also a head teacher. So,
with Itch being so science-based, obviously, did you have to do a lot of research before you wrote the book?
Yes, in as much as the science had to work, and the book, the magic, if you like, in the book is real. The science in the book does work. It uses his element collection. It gets him into trouble, and he uses it to get out of trouble. There's a sequence where some xenon gas is used as an anaesthetic, and that is genuinely that's true. The mysterious element 126 doesn't exist, but in theory it could. The island of stability does exist. Or people think it does exist. So everything in there works. And because I'm a history and politics person really rather than science, I had to work very hard to make sure that world is correctly represented. So to that effect, I worked with some people who know what they're talking about. A top chemist and a top nuclear physicist said, try that, just change that slightly. So, but the research is actually half the fun. And there's a sequence in the first book where Itch and Jack go down a mine, and I wrote that and thought, well, that's okay, but it doesn't. It did feel to me as though this is written by someone who's never been near a mine in his life, which is true. So I went down a mine, and I went to the National Mining Museum in Huddersfield, and I went down a mine for the afternoon, and it's the most astonishing place, and everybody has to do it. But it just meant that the smells and the feel and the cables and the lighting and all those things that you only understand once you've been down a mine are actually in the book. So yes is the answer to your question. There was a lot of research into it.
When you were at school, we know that you didn't like science.
Yeah.
What was your favourite subject?
Well, it was history, really. History was the only subject that I showed any application or skill at. So when I went to university, I did history and politics. But whether it's because I haven't got the right kind of brain, or whether it's because my science teachers weren't particularly great, who knows? But it wasn't really until later that I started to think, actually, no, this science thing is quite interesting. So history was really... Well, I should have written a book about a kid who likes history, really. That would have been a lot easier, but I went in another direction.
We know that you present BBC Two Radio Drive Time. Do you prefer presenting the radio or writing stories, and do you plan to carry on working for the BBC now?
Good question. Do you work for Media Guardian? Radio 2 is my job. The BBC pay me, so that's what I do. Strictly between you and me, presenting music is like a part-time job, which means that I can write in the morning. So doing drive time is the perfect way of splitting my day. So in the morning I write, and in the afternoon I do the radio. So yes, I'm going to carry on doing both. I'm enjoying telling the story very much, but the radio is my job, so I'm going to carry on doing both.
Obviously, you're well known for your radio. Would you one day like to be just as well known for your writing? And would you have ever tried to publish a book before you achieved fame through the radio? Well,
the first meeting I had with Random House, who are the publishers, I did say, why don't I write it under a different name? Why don't we publish this under a different name? Because I wanted people just to like the book or not like the book and not react to the author's name on there. They kind of looked at me as though I was completely mad because obviously you have to take promotion where you can get it, and people are interested if you've written a book. But the book is coming out in America in April, and so therefore a whole bunch of people are going to see and experience the book who've never heard my radio program. Now that I find very exciting. So as far as the ambition for the book is concerned, yeah, let's be more famous for the book than the radio. That would be great.
Have you got any plans for other books?
Well, I've just this week started book 3, and it's proving every bit as difficult as book 2. So yes, the thing is about Itch and Jack and Chloe is that I like writing about them. I like them as people, and I like spending time with them. So when I finished the second book, I didn't know what was going to happen because the deal with the publishers was for 2. But I have started work on the 3rd because they have said they want more. So the plan is to do 3 and maybe 4 and then maybe 5. It kind of depends who buys it, really, I suppose. Yeah. But I like writing about Itch. I like him, and I like the relationship, particularly with his sister and his cousin. So I would like to carry on.
Having written for your son, for the children, would you ever consider writing a book for adults or your own age?
The honest answer to that is, I see it as one and the same thing. That even though I started off writing this for Joe, after the first chapter, I wrote it for me. I've written this as a book that I'd like to read, which maybe I'm just very childish and infantile. But there's quite a lot of stuff in here which I think adults will enjoy, or it'll make them laugh. Or I mean, there's a sequence in the first book, and there's a joke about a goat falling down a mine, which many years ago was a confession that I did on The Breakfast Show. And it's just sort of passed off in it as a throwaway reference. So, and some people have commented on that and said, I spotted that reference to the goat down the mine. I remember that confession. So it's sort of combined, although it's marketed, it says 10+ on the back, and it is aimed obviously at the children and teenage market. In my head, it's an adult book. And so I'm going to carry on writing in exactly the same vein. And if adults like it, and if kids like it, then that's great.
You've got the perfect book.
Well, I hope so. And
Thank you very much.
Hey, well, that's a pleasure. Thank you. Great questions. The media beckons for both of you, I'm sure.
Hope so.